to Association Chat. Hello, hello, hello. Did you like that little glimpse of me in between the countdown and the intro? It was beautiful, right? Welcome to Association Chat, where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italien, and before we get started, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the Patreon patrons who help keep this show going, who help keep everything rolling. And if you're not a part of the private community, we have one on Facebook and Mighty Networks, we have LinkedIn groups, you have to get involved. I hope you will, and I hope you'll become a Patreon patron as well. So visit www.patreon.com/associationchat. Yay. And now on to the show. So what are we going to be talking about? We are going to be talking about the digital divide. The digital divide is an issue that has been close to my heart for a long time because technology is such a huge part of everything that I've done with my career, how I've advanced, even from the beginning. And as technology has evolved, my career has evolved. But what happens if you don't have access or if you're not able to get that digital literacy like so many other people have access to? That's been an issue that's really weighed heavily on me. And it's something that is a very deep issue. There's a lot more to this topic than just that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the dangers of internet inequality. We're going to talk about the steps that EYEJ, which is an organization focused on empowering youth and exploring justice, what they're doing and how they're approaching things like the digital divide and how they're working on it to ensure that change happens. So with me today to talk about all of this, Mai Moore and Treya Gray. Hi. Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
I'm so happy to see you both here. You know, digital divide, it's such a heady topic. I want to just jump right into talking a little bit about what this is and why people should care. But before we even do that, I feel like people should understand a little bit about who you both are and your involvement with this organization, EYEJ. So, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us. We're super excited to be here. My name is Mai Moore, and I'm the co-founder and executive director to EYEJ, Empowering Youth Exploring Justice, which is a nonprofit based in Cleveland, Ohio. And we are all about empowering advocates for change. What we really do is create and empower change makers. And we have been around, almost 8 years, and we've served 1,600 underserved youth with our programming. It's an extraordinary organization full of very diverse people who are pushing it forward. But we really believe in a pathway for our youth. And our first step in our pathway is for 6th to 12th graders in our YODJ Youth Online Discussing Justice program. That's very focused on social emotional development and mental health and healing and really discussing everyday topics youth face so that they can go to the next step of actually creating solutions. And then our job is to really guide and teach and provide resources on how to create systemic change with the EYEJ Youth Council, which Treya is part of. The Youth Council is powerful. Not only are they a trusted voice, but they focus on tactics like policy, social policy, programming, youth voice, community organizing, research, and a lot more in order to create change.
That's so incredible. I mean, that's taking on such important issues, such important topics, and working with such a wonderful group of people. Treya, how did you get involved in the very beginning?
So actually, I had seen that my friend was posting about it, and I'm really into like social and all of that. So I got interviewed, and then I got in, and I actually got the role of social media and merchandise lead. So basically, what I do is I make sure that the social media is up to date, and then I post the events and advertise on there. And then also I designed some t-shirts. There's one over there but I don't want to get up. So
That's okay. By the end of the show, I want to figure out how we can all order t-shirts. I want a t-shirt. I need to
They're
make this
awesome. They're really internet is oxygen, are the shirts. And Treya created them herself.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
And this
I
is your
designed
artwork
it,
behind you,
and
Treya,
then-
right? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, wait, wrong way. The camera's inverted. That's So I did it digitally, and then I hand pressed them. But next time we're probably gonna get them ordered. But yeah, that's my role.
I love it. And by the way, I think we were talking a little bit before the show started, and the artwork behind you is all your artwork too, right? You have your artwork displayed.
Yeah, I think it's all mine, except
Some
for
of it, yeah.
Yeah, most of it's mine.
I love it. This is so wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the digital divide. What is the digital divide for those people who are watching who are like, what is that? What, I don't even know.
The digital divide is basically, if you want to summarize it, is people having a lack of internet broadband. You can go, we could talk about this for a number of hours, but you can go back to 50, 60 years ago, where the housing market and the way that banks were involved, and the breakdown of the haves and have-nots with loans, and really going through the years, the lack of internet broadband is directly tied to that, in the way that, for example, fibers have been laid, and who can get access and who cannot. In Cleveland, for example, we have over 40,000 families that do not have access to internet broadband, and that's completely unacceptable. And this is not only a Cleveland issue, this is across the nation. And you probably have heard a lot more buzz about it in the last year because of COVID. It didn't just start when COVID started. This has been an ongoing issue, but COVID just kind of, made the issue louder. And it does, what's interesting about the digital divide too, is it impacts not only the haves or have-nots or the underserved, but also people are affected by it in different households, every household income, every ethnicity, age across the United States. There's a lot of focus in cities and also in rural areas as well. So this is definitely a issue across the United States.
It's something that I heard. I had a chance to listen to a recent panel discussion that was held. I think it was in Cincinnati that Treya, you were a part of too, I believe, where the discussion had to do with the digital divide, and it was talking a lot. The people were talking a lot about, this is not just something where it's like grandma can't figure out how to get online. This is something that's impacting children and teenagers and people who are younger as well, because it's not just because of an ability to understand how to use technology. It's access to having a good signal so that you can even attend some of your online classes and things like that. Treya, how have you witnessed some of the people that handling issues related to the digital divide?
Well, personally, to start off with, my sister, she didn't have internet in the beginning, and I talk about this all the time. Like, I was really worried about my brother and my sister being at home more because it was like an abusive household. So it was like I was really worried because if you're gonna be home more around an abuser, you're gonna be abused more. So that's the first thing that I was worried about. And then the second thing, I have friends and stuff. You could go on social media and people would post that they have to go to like McDonald's or outside of Walmart just to get Wi-Fi. And then even using that Wi-Fi, it's terrible. So people aren't getting the right education. So we're being held back. We're being held back emotionally and educationally at that. So I don't know. I feel like personally, I've been held back emotionally. Like my growth has been stunted. Like especially because I had anxiety before COVID, but now it's really up there. Like I don't want to go back to school. Like if we go back to school, I'm gonna walk in there and my heart's gonna be beating out of my chest because of anxiety.
Yeah, and this actually, I know our topic is focused a lot about the digital divide, but I think that this actually dovetails into that really well. This impact that it has is more than just, what does it have to do with technology, but it's the way that we live our lives. It's the way it impacts us emotionally. It's the way that people are handling their personal lives at home too, as a result of access to the technology and the way that they're able to use it.
Definitely. I mean, like Treya, her T-shirt, internet is oxygen. As Biden says, internet is electricity now, as part of his new plan for internet broadband being infrastructure. But to your point, yes, it impacts all of us. But what the worry is first of all, youth are our future, and already we have this set of problems with youth. For example, there's less amounts of youth that are applying for colleges, and some are not reapplying for their school district. And then they've got issues around this online learning because they don't have internet broadband, and going to McDonald's or working off your phone or maybe having a broken laptop is not acceptable because, to your point, it acts, think about it, you guys. You use the internet for everything. You pay bills, you're getting your telehealth appointments, you're looking for jobs, you're applying for jobs, you're hearing about communication about COVID, through the internet. And so the results of this then lead to, like Treya was saying, which is really, really important, is mental health issues within our youth. And again, it doesn't matter the background or what type of school, private, public, what ethnicity. I mean, all kids are facing this. So, and how do you honestly function without internet, right? So this is a very big problem, especially if we're expecting our youth to graduate, to function in society. And youth, definitely impact our economy, right?
Right.
We want our youth to get educated so that they can be part of our community, that they can get jobs and stimulate the economy. But how can we do that if we're not giving them the basic foundation of internet?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and talking about the workforce, one of my clients is a chamber of commerce, and as they're looking at their focus, they're working on their strategic plan, and as they're looking at their focus moving into the future, it's not that they don't have jobs, it's that like jobs available. It's that they have issues with not having the digital literacy in the workforce available. So it's a matter of, how are we going to get enough people who have the skills that we need to fill these jobs and to handle that. And there's only going to be more of that. I think about the history of our public education and how schools were put together. And it was in order to, create this workforce, for good or for bad. It was like we needed a certain level of education in our workforce. And yet, how do we say that we're addressing that today, when so much of what we do in the workforce requires this minimum level of access and understanding of technology, and so many people don't have it for so many different reasons?
Yeah, I think you're saying a lot. I think we actually just lost Treya because of internet connection. Oh, there she goes again. But we have an example of that with another EYEJ Youth Council member. He was actually applying to Amazon, and he had a lack of internet broadband, and so he had to use his phone. And if you know anything about Amazon, and a lot of the way that the workforce is going is everything is online. So through his interview process and application process, he had to apply online. And it was causing him, when he went there finally for the training, he missed the page. He had to go back and use his friend's phone. And then it caused him to miss a week's worth of work. And so everybody is losing out at that point. So I think that's something that we definitely need to think about and embrace. I mean, it's a serious issue. And when you're talking about digital literacy, It's amazing, all the energy, and you hear about, Biden's plan. And for example, state of Ohio is putting in like $100 million into internet broadband for telco companies, and Biden's focused on municipal. But the thing is, the issues around that are, some of these plans are going to take another 2 to 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Cleveland's already been working on this for 20 years, which is not good. But the other problem is, to your point, digital literacy, right? We're taking, the adoption, say we get the internet implemented, which is awesome. We can't just assume that everybody knows how to use their computer, how to log on to Wi-Fi or internet.
Right.
I think about when I got my first computer, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've lost some of those classes in our school system. And so there needs to be a whole effort around digital literacy, which is actually our EYEJ Youth Council is focused on a new policy around digital literacy, and actually a new, very cool millennial mentorship program around digital literacy for our youth. But that's a next step that we also have to be thinking about as well, for sure.
Well, for those people who are watching, and they're saying, well, this is a nice thing. I want people to be able to understand how to use the internet more, or yeah, it's just, it's probably certain disadvantaged youth or something that don't have access, but everybody else is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Why should they still care? Why should they still care about this topic?
Right. Treya, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I can, because it keeps kicking me out.
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, you're here.
All right.
Why should people care?
People should care because at the end of the day, like the youth, so for a long time, everything, like the digital divide is directly impacted by redlining, because the neighborhoods that are affected now are primarily Black neighborhoods, and the reason that we're separated is because of redlining. So it's like we're creating a barrier between race even further, because of the simple fact that it's more likely for Black children not to have the resources that they need. So it's like, for even the people that aren't separated by race, the people that are separated by the digital divide are being pulled further back. So the kids that need education aren't going to be able to get the education that they need. They won't be able to become the leaders that we want them to become. It's just that.
Yeah. So what's redlining for people who are unfamiliar with that term?
So basically, I think Maya touched on this. But basically, banks would deny loans for people of specific races to move into, like a Black person to move into a white neighborhood. They would deny them just so that they could keep people separated.
Got it. Yeah. And in looking at some of the digital divide issues, I was looking at how, well, why is it that certain areas receive broadband when others don't? How do companies decide where to invest in where they're doing all of this? And, it's just talk about exacerbating an existing problem. A lot of companies are not going to say, oh, well, I'm going to choose this neighborhood that isn't financially prosperous and doesn't have the people who are going to be investing a lot with us. They're not going to choose that neighborhood. They're not going to choose to invest in that area. And it just continues to propagate a problem, because without that kind of access, how are people supposed to, be able to move past some of the barriers that stand in their way?
So that's a big topic that you're talking about, and we really, as a society and a community, really need to hold these telco companies accountable. But to your point, yeah, the telco companies purposely invest in areas where they can make profit, right? We are in a capitalistic society, and we were actually involved, for example, with our Ohio State House Bill 13 that was going to give additional dollars to telco companies to implement internet broadband. And that's dangerous because you have to look at how the fibers were laid.
Mm-hmm.
We have a whole history of this on our website on the digital divide page, for example, for in Cleveland. But we really need to be a more inclusive economy and society, and really think about new ideas for solutions. Now, the good thing is there's a lot of new ideas for solutions. There are, a lot of organizations and people that are focusing on free Wi-Fi solutions, but they need to be empowered and embraced too, because for a telco company to invest fibers in a community, it's very, very expensive. And as an example, in Cleveland, the way the fibers were laid are, again, you can see literally the map about the haves and have-nots and how they're not embracing the underserved area. So again, answering many of your questions, we need to hold businesses or telco companies, accountable. Also embrace new ideas for solutions that are affordable. And if you think about it, internet is very expensive. I mean, people are paying, I don't know about you, but between $50 and $100 a month. And the interesting thing about it is that, I don't know if you guys know this, but you're probably using maybe 30 to 35% of the actual service that you pay each month. And so what's happening with that the other margin, right? That's how the telco companies are making so much money. And so again, we're in a new world, we're in a changed world. And so we need to, again, think outside the box. We need to hold telco companies accountable. We need to demand that they help empower other maybe solutions or organizations that are working on this. I mean, in Cleveland, for example, we've had AT&T openly admit that they didn't want to invest because it's too expensive and that they don't think they're going to make profit. So, this is a universal problem, and it goes beyond just the telco companies. Government officials that are supporting these companies, policymakers, we need to hold them all accountable as well, and we hold the power to do that.
Well, and I want to just reiterate a point that we've made before. My background, I didn't come from, the inner city or anything like that, but I came from a very rural area. I lived out in the middle of nowhere. And the access that I had in the early days to the computer was because I was in a gifted program in school. It was a rural school, very few people going to it, and they had only a few computers. And because I was part of this program, I was able to go and during recesses and things like that, go and access the computers. Mm-hmm. But I often look back at that and I think about my classmates. And I think about people who awesome people, super smart, but did it hurt them that they didn't have the same access? I don't know. I have to imagine, though, that having access early on made a difference. It's probably why I'm doing the things that I'm doing today, or at least part of the reason. Mm-hmm. And so, what does it mean when, there's some parts of, and I was from Missouri, there's some parts of Missouri that still don't have internet access. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about times when, children were staying home from school and things like that, or people were being asked to not go into work, how are they supposed to do these things when they don't have internet access, like at all? Or if they do, it's extremely pricey. That was another issue that I'd run into, where it was like exorbitant fees for the one internet provider that you could get in rural areas. So. Right.
It's interesting that you bring up rural. We just partnered with Land O'Lakes on the American Connection project that is very focused on rural areas, but the project has gotten so large that entities like us are partnering with them. But you got to think about, it goes even beyond the education issues, right? What about the farmers? Every industry now is based on technology. So again, if you don't have access to that internet, it impacts us all. And so that's why this is a universal issue that we need to combat together to create solutions for.
Yeah, I think oftentimes going back, about my mom complaining about not being able to understand how to program the VCR. And, just last week I was explaining about, here, mom, here's how on your phone you're supposed to use FaceTime to like FaceTime and all this stuff.
Good luck with that.
I know. But it's just, there are so many different aspects. I mean, even when it came to, older people trying to figure out how to, and not just older people, by the way, I feel like that's also something, it's very ageist to say that because a lot of people were having a difficult time and maybe still are having a difficult time figuring out where and how to sign up to get their vaccines,
Yep.
And when all of this stuff is relying on you being able to, go to www.signupformyvaccine.com. And it's like, it's not that easy for everyone, We think it is a lot of times, but that is wrong thinking, it's a mistake.
I mean, yeah. I mean, my mom, here in Cleveland too, like to your point, all the vaccines to get an appointment, you have to go online. And I think another kind of area that it impacts too, that Treya touched upon earlier, is violence.
Mm-hmm.
When kids are not in school, they don't have that structure. They have lack of resources, excuse me. All this issues around COVID. And then look at society, Black Lives Matter, the police murders. I mean, it's just the issues are endless. And then as a society, we're dumping our issues with the youth. What happens with that is naturally, this isn't necessarily their fault, is that it leads to increased amount of violence. And we're seeing at EYEJ, not only EYEJ, but some of our partner organizations, it's very scary.
Mm-hmm.
The levels of violence that are going on. And we're really worried about this summer. And again, this mental state that Treya was talking about, the anxiety, the isolation, is honestly in all of us. I've been on Zoom meetings with like high officials. Everybody is fatigued. Everyone's facing isolation. Everyone's facing anxiety. So this is a fundamental issue that we could fix so easily in a quick amount of time if we could get together and focus. We have so many other issues to figure out in this country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We won't run out. We won't ever run out.
We'll never run out. Yeah. Right. But this is a fundamental infrastructure, material thing that can be solved. And we need to get behind it. And we really need people of all backgrounds, professions, organizations to speak up about it, your experience. Everybody has some kind of story with lack of internet access, whether the speed is slow, whether, to your point, they only had one provider to choose from. When I moved into my home, I had 6 providers to choose from. There should be equal opportunity here, right? Or to your point about access or how to set it up.
Yeah. Treya, I mean, we're talking a lot about the violence and I can tell you that, I live outside of Philadelphia and I don't know if you've been following the news for Philly, but oh my gosh, Philadelphia is just, the violence has been skyrocketing.
Yep.
And I wonder, a lot of people are saying, why is it happening?
Right.
I wonder how much of it has to do with exactly what we're talking about here today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, we went over this in one of the other streams that I was in. We had went over it, and it was like the reason why kids are out doing more violent things is because their parents aren't home, for one. So they're sitting at home. And if they don't have access to internet, they don't have anything to do. So they're going outside. They're getting into trouble. They're going to gangs, and they obviously don't have the money to have the internet access. So they have to do gang related things to get money, selling drugs, just getting into things because they think that they're supposed to be supporting their family, but they're just getting themselves deeper into the hole that society has already put them in.
Right. It's about survival. And then think about what we're teaching them on TV and through the news, where you can go and raid a Capitol building, or you can run a church or whatever organizations. Like, what are we teaching our youth right now?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to bring up this quote, and a big topic that gets discussed a lot in association chat. Just it has to do with community and trust. Those are two issues that are really important to me personally, and that I think fall in line with just about everything that we talk about in association chat and on association chat. And so recently, Facebook, for good or for ill, they partnered up with a really great research team that did some work on community. And obviously important for them to be getting information about this. But a quote from the report that came out, and this was not from Facebook, but this was from the report, had to do, and it was this, it had to do with what is a community. They say a community is a collection of people in which they receive a sense of belonging, connection, and a feeling of safety. They give trust and investment over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that up in our discussion today to get your feelings, your thoughts on this and how it relates to what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do feel that, when we're talking about technology and access to technology, a lot of that can help us with that sense of belonging, with that sense of connection.
Yes.
So just some thoughts on your take on this quote and how it applies to our discussion today.
I think this quote is really everything. And we could talk about this forever. I mean, what we do see, with the 1,600 youth that we've served, especially with our YODJ program, the number one thing that we see is a lack of trust, right? In Cleveland, as an example, Northeast Ohio as an example, there's 27,000 nonprofits, yet our youth are still facing this epidemic of toxic stress, lack of internet access, issues, right? And in our this is exactly what we do in our YODJ programming. As an example, is we bring diverse people to have relevant everyday discussions with our youth about things that they're facing in this customized way. But the point is that the number one kind of foundation of that program is about openness and trust and ability to be authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. And we have forgotten about that as a society. And matter of fact, we haven't maybe forgotten about it. We criticize it, we ridicule it, we attack, we put down if you're any of these things. And it's like, guys, do we not remember what it's like to be human, right? Right. So when you create this, and I see it within, you can ask Treya, but I see it within our team too. We're a very diverse group of people, but the number one thing is creating that trust, because if you don't have trust, you can't do anything. And I personally am not willing to be part of an organization or be in a space where there's not trust, because that leads to negative outcomes. And then I become part of the problem. So, but what I can say, a positive thing is that what that trust and safety does is it creates innovation, new ideas for programming. It problem solves issues. It makes people feel welcome and that they're part of a collective. It creates amazing outcomes on whatever you're doing, product, program, and so on. EYEJ in the last year has done probably the most powerful work we've ever done before, because of just this, about that community, about the connection, about belonging, about being able to speak up, about spreading voice. And so I think that this is everything. And this digital divide thing, what's interesting about it is that I think, and personally, I see that people are really afraid of change. But what I always say is that we have no choice but to change. We're in a new world, and it's a new mindset. It's a new way of thinking. And this right here is the answer, in my opinion.
Thoughts on that, Treya? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that internet brings a really strong sense of belonging, even though people don't like for their kids to be on the internet and meet people off the internet. But it's like, once you get onto the internet, you have access to people just like you, so you can find your crowd of people and talk to them over the internet. Like, I know multiple people who are friends on the internet versus people that they talk to on an everyday basis. And you could get, I've had multiple friendships off of the internet, and I feel like I've created more better bonds from the internet being in person. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, it totally makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. So, the the people that don't have access to the internet, it's like it's really holding them back, especially because like when I was in school, there was a girl who didn't have access to a phone, like she didn't have access to internet, anything, and she was perfectly fine with it. But you definitely noticed she was very off from the normal teenagers within the school. So now I have no clue how she's reacting or how far behind she is within society.
I think about too, like when, and Treya, you're young, but when I think about when Facebook came out, what it did for me is I was able to get in touch with like some of my best friends that I hadn't seen like pictures of their kids or, you know, where they're at. It made me feel so good that I could connect with them. And then with COVID, I don't know if you guys are, or Treya's on there, part of Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse for me has been refreshing and an extraordinary experience. I've connected with so many people and like-minded people. And that all comes from having access to the internet, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, Clubhouse, it's really cool, but I've listened to it, and I've even, I've hosted a couple of discussions. But it's so time consuming that I'm like, oh, I can't right now. But
totally.
but I think it's so wonderful to be able to have something where it allows for that sort of connection with more people who, are like-minded, but maybe you've never had an excuse to connect or talk more with those people before.
Right.
The thing that I think is really sad, though, is, Treya mentioned her, the person that she knew in school who didn't have a phone and didn't have that internet access like that, and wasn't able to connect the same way that everyone else was. And you do start thinking about, while we're just rattling off our experiences on Clubhouse and stuff like that, that's a luxury that we're able to do that when somebody else is not able to have any idea what that is a real reference to, what that experience is like, the things that you're learning when you go through and you're actually doing some of this stuff. I mean, we're constantly learning how to do this sort of dance socially with each other, if using these different technologies. And so what does it mean when somebody like that enters the workforce later and they just haven't done any of that?
Right. Think about how much you guys learn from the internet. Like I know like my daughter, she learned about her hair on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right? Or
yes.
like stay-at-home moms who want to learn about whatever, new dishes or how to fix something. I mean, we use the internet every day, all day for so much information. And then if you don't have the access, like you're not in the know.
Right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what's happening now to address some of these issues, because certainly, there are a lot of different ways that the digital divide can negatively impact people. But it's not like there aren't people like EYEJ that, there aren't organizations that are actively working to try to make change happen. So what's happening right now?
There is a lot happening, which is really good. Most recently, Biden just announced, like I mentioned, a new plan where they're going to invest $100 billion into internet broadband and getting it into different cities across the country. And I think the biggest excitement for me in that plan is that he named internet as an infrastructure. So for this plan, I think it was announced last Thursday. Don't quote me on that. Internet was not even considered like a utility or part of our infrastructure in society. So what that means is that's going to lead to policy changes, funding changes of how things get addressed. There's also there's all kinds of the different various states are getting federal dollars and trying to implement solutions around internet. Obviously every state, every city is so different. It's a little bit dangerous because some are really focused on telco companies, where like some entities are focused on municipal solutions. What I personally would like to see more of support on these free Wi-Fi solutions. But there's great organizations like NDIA that are really pushing for like free Wi-Fi solutions, and you've got a lot of nonprofits and technical providers that are part of that across the country. Then you've got like things like the American Connection Project with Land O'Lakes, which over 140 entities are part of that. And EYEJ is very lucky to be part of that as one of the only two entities in Ohio that are really pushing for policy changes, which leads to funding streams for solutions. And we are seeing more and more kind of digital literacy programs, but you got to remember that it's so complex.
Yeah.
And it's so complex because people are at different levels and stages and have different equipments, and some have hotspots, some have, a 20-year-old computer, some have a 1-year-old computer, some have their phone. Everybody seems to be in different places. And I think an issue that I'm seeing is that we try to segment in this country a lot of times, like we try to bucket issues.
Yeah.
And when we did our research, we've done a ton of research with youth and talking to different people. People are in so many different scenarios. You talk about the people going to McDonald's. You talk about the phone. You talk about someone at home with a hotspot and 6 kids in their home. You talk about the rural issues. You talk about fiber issues. So I think it's exciting, though, that we are really putting emphasis on this area to fix. Again, the worry that I have right now, just where we are at as of this moment, is timing on policy changes and funding strategies and implementation and then adoption of digital literacy. This is not a quick, this is not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, look, COVID is now, we are 13 months into this. We still don't have solutions in place. Like in Cleveland, some cities do, but Cleveland, we still don't have, we have some solutions that are being worked on, but I mean, this is going to take, 2 to 10 years. So I go back to free Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi is less costly to implement and integrate. And also it's affordable, and we can get it up quicker, and it's cheaper. And you see a lot of cities that have implemented these solutions that are it's really exciting to watch.
So, I'm thinking about what we can do as individuals, what we can do as association leaders. And I know, a lot of the people who watch association chat or listen to association chat are these association executives who, might be asking themselves, okay, I buy it. I think it's very important to have access. What can I do though? What can I do individually? And what can I do on behalf of my organization? How might my association get involved?
Right. So we face this every day. People ask us what to do. And everybody is very, very different. I think from our viewpoint, I'll give a couple of things that you can do. Number one is we need more partners and allies to support our work. And that can come in many ways. Number one, obviously, if you are willing and able to give a financial contribution, that always helps a nonprofit. And trust me, those dollars count. Other ways are start volunteering, right? Maybe get involved in some of the policy or social policy or programming work that we're doing. And there's different ways. Like if you are an expert in something, we can use that help. Or if you want to be a mentor, you can be part of our digital literacy program. Or if you just want to take an hour and a half and volunteer for a YODJ program, just to understand kind of the situation better and understand kind of the climate and what youth are going through, that all helps. Other ways, if you don't want to get involved with EYEJ, is, talking with your government officials and really demanding this change. That is very, very important. And I think the most important thing, the advice I would give is think about how this impacts you individually, whether it is that you have employees, or whether it is that you need your youth to graduate and go to college and get into the workforce, or whether it is you're tied to telehealth somehow and that industry. I mean, this issue impacts our economy, it impacts our society, it impacts our mental health. And so think that's probably the most important thing I would say is think about how this impacts you. How do you have a personal connection to what we're talking about, and find your own voice in this and speak up about it in the way that you feel comfortable. Some entities, like we have a blog. Do you want to come write a blog, or if you want to write a social media post? I mean, it's endless. You talk to your media companies, or if you are affiliated with organizations or companies and want to, for example, provide a sponsorship to EYEJ. By the way, we have an amazing event June 4th, our EYEJ Empowering Changemakers event. It's the biggest event we've ever done before. We've done over 300 events. And we are going to be, one of the panel rooms is actually about the digital divide. We have over 35 speakers. So if you want to just come to that event and just be in a lighter kind of atmosphere and not, just keep things positive and learn about change makers and more about the digital divide, we have some awesome people involved in that. Come to that, or talk to your company and provide a sponsorship if you want some advertising opportunities. Or there's so much you can talk to youth. Ask a youth it doesn't matter what youth it is. If I don't care if they go private school, public school, whatever, ask them how the digital divide impacts them. You're going to get a mouthful.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask, and hopefully everyone has heard what we're talking about today, and they're trying to figure out how they can apply some of these ideas and some of these things into their lives so that they can make real change. And I'm going to say, and not but, and here we are toward the end of our interview. And every time I have someone on the show, I have been asking the question of the week. A big part of being a part of the Association Chat community is, seeing how people respond to different types of questions. And so while this doesn't have to do exactly with the digital divide, it does give us some insight into your own perspective. So Tréyah, this question is for you. This is the question of the week in the community. Has your opinion of success changed in the last 3 years? If so, how? And what do you think of our society's definition, or our society's definition is versus yours? So that last part's a pretty big one. So we'll focus on the first part of this question. Has your opinion of success changed in the last 3 years? If so, how? So I am going to throw this over to Tréyah first.
Okay. So, yes, I would say yes. So, like, when I was growing up, like, I had all these big dreams and all this other stuff, but, like, as I got into it, I realized, like, it's very much possible, but the more I get into things, the more complicated it is. It always seems like when you get to somewhere, you have to, like, it's just something that blocks it, whether it's money, whether it's racial problems, whether it's like societal problems with LGBTQ rights. Like, it's just always something that's a roadblock. So it's just a matter of, like, to add into, like, how do you think society's definition versus yours. So it's like a lot of times, I believe, like, a growth mindset. That's what I have. So, like, if you come across something and it's like a loss, take it as a lesson. Like, you take that and you realize that you have to keep going, because the next time it most likely is not going to be like that. And if you take your loss as a lesson and you realize that what you did wrong before could be changed, then you just make it better. And even if that doesn't work, then you just keep changing it. You just keep growing, and you just keep finding different ways to make it so that you're able to do what you want to do. But I feel like a lot of society is just like, okay, it is what it is. Like, you fail at this, go to the next thing. Like, there's no push, there's no shove, there's not a lot of support either. So it's like you really have to find the group of people that are like-minded individuals, and you just have it's hard, but you just have to keep going.
Thank you.
I think for me, I mean, all of my team knows this, but my personality in general is just like, I work really hard and I'm like this hustler. And, I think that is an example of also of society. Like, we're not successful unless we're working hard and like literally killing ourselves to see success. And with COVID, I have learned relationships are important. And I really have spent, even including my team, is like just spending more time on scenarios rather than brushing over them. So as an example, I come from the tech industry. So my training is in that, fast paced, go, 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 get stuff done, impact, results, ROI. And so some of that is definitely within EYEJ, no questions asked there. But, and it is important because that's really what has pushed us forward. But the relationships, listening to your team, also just making sure I'm happy. Like COVID has really taught you to really pause for a moment and are you really happy here? That happiness is probably the most important success. And I think a lot of us try to reach that. And we get frustrated that sometimes that we're not happy, whether we're trying to survive, whether we're dealing with oppression, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's very hard to be happy. But just really, I think, also slowing down and understanding that you are enough right here in this moment. You are okay and you are enough. That's really important. And that's something that I work on a lot for myself and self-awareness there. Because that peace is probably the most valuable thing. Happiness, peace. That's more valuable than the dollars, in my opinion.
Wow.
And I've had experiences on both realms. I've had experience making a lot of money. I helped 2 companies go public in New York City and Los Angeles. And I've literally slept in my car, not making a salary for a year and a half as a single mother with a daughter, pushing this organization forward. So I have been very honored and lucky to experience the dynamics of life. And I'm religious, so that's God to me, just really keeping me in check, making sure I'm humble. But I also, my personality, really like to understand what I am moving forward and pushing forward. Because if I don't understand it, you're not really making real solutions. But the point is, again, that peace is so important.
I'm so glad that we have this question of the week piece at the end of these, and especially today, because I feel like in listening to Treyah's answer and to your answer, I feel like I got a little more insight into each of you and what you feel is important and what you think, is sort of a vision for the way that we should be, right? And we should be moving towards individually. And I just think that, so much of this digital divide issue is something that it impacts all of us, no matter who we are, and actually no matter what income level. Because even if you have a company and you're doing extremely well and you're wealthy and you're not one of those people that struggles with technology, you still need a workforce that understands and has those skills. And what I'm hearing you say, and you say, Treya, is you're saying that, it's not just about success, but when we're looking at something like digital divide, we have to think about what makes us in ourselves individually feel like we are doing what we're supposed to be doing to I guess live our best lives, right? To be our best selves. And we can't always do that alone. What I'm hearing from both of you is that a lot of it is important. A lot of what's important to you is in seeing those relationships that you have that mean the most with other people, and tying this all together. Sometimes, especially during times where you're dealing with a pandemic, your connection to those important people in your lives might be through, access to technology. So I want to thank you both for being here today, for talking about this very important topic. Treya, what's your future with EYEJ? I mean, I see the artwork in the back. I want to buy the t-shirt. And by the way, can we get the t-shirts through the website?
Just email us at hello@eyej.org.
Okay.
We haven't had a chance to set that up, but they really are awesome shirts. I have personally gotten so many compliments from them, so they're really good.
I need to have this Treya original. Yeah. Treya, any thoughts as far as like what's next for you, what you're going to be up to?
Just continuing to share with the world what we do and emphasize our viewpoints, because I don't believe in arguing. I think that people come to their terms at their own time, because you can't force anybody to think a certain type of way. It's like people already know. It's just a matter of acceptance. So you just kind of have to keep pushing the right idea. So yeah.
But Treya, I think that education is important, and I do really truly believe that some people still really don't know. But to your point, there are some people that do know and are not acknowledging it. And I just want to say that just remember that not everybody can experience peace, maybe like that you can, and that we are one community, whether we want to admit it or not. And social impact is really important. And when we impact one person or organization, you're impacting many. So we have the power and the ability and the resources to solve an issue, which is extraordinary.
And so is that what's coming up for you, Mai, in the future? Same question as for Treya. What's coming up for you?
What's coming up for me is this EYEJ Empowering Changemakers event, June 4th. Yeah. Super excited. It's going to be very powerful. We have literally people from around the world that's going to be part of that. Definitely invite you guys. Everybody's welcome for sure. And we are just heavily fundraising we have a plan for the next 5 years that we want to implement for sustainability, so that we can continue to empower and create change makers like Treya. I'm excited to see Treya's future. She's graduating soon, going to college. She loves business and art. There's a lot about her that's extraordinary. And so let's empower her.
I love it. I love it. Thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
All right. Thank you. So what did you think? Oh, there was so much to learn from today's interview. Treya and Mai, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the digital divide, but to talk about so much more. You know, as we often see when we talk about technology, it still comes back to being human. Ultimately, it all comes back to who we are as human beings and how we're treating each other and how we're interacting with the world around us. So what I'm going to ask of everyone today is I'm going to ask for you to think a lot about the topic that we discussed today and how you in your individual lives and also you in your associations can work to bridge the digital divide and to work towards understanding each other a little bit better. Whether you're like Treya and you don't want to argue, or you're like Mai and you say sometimes arguments look, it's more like education, right? And it's educating people about what's going on. Either way, let's talk about how we can talk with each other and take these conversations so that we can make this world more like the kind of world that we all want to live in. And with that, I hope that you keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.